Hi, everyone. You're listening to the Imperfect podcast. I'm your host, Kirsten Pfeiffer, and I'm here today at Mastermind Studios with my dear friend, Stefanie Rouse. Stefanie is so incredible. She is a digital creator, and she's a relationship mentor with her master's in marriage therapy. And her and her husband just have such an incredible story, but they also just do such amazing work and create so much content just to give people hope and empower them to live out their purpose. And I'm always personally so inspired by your content, Stefanie. So you have so much wisdom to share, and I'm really excited to have you here today. So welcome.
Oh, thanks, Kirsten. That's so kind of you. I'm so glad to be here with you.
Yeah. And I know a lot of your story, and so there's so much we can cover, but I just would love if you could get started by just telling the audience a little bit about who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. So I'm, like you said, Stefanie Rouse, and I live in Los Angeles. I've lived here for about 12 or 13 years now.
Wow.
I think.
Veteran.
Yeah. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I never really thought I would leave, and it's crazy. God's taken me on this crazy adventure. So I went to Penn State for undergrad, and when I was actually studying to be a teacher and did special education and education, but when I was in the classroom, I would look out to the students and I would see their faces, and I would be drawn to the ones that I could tell weren't emotionally present, and I could just tell there was something going on under the surface. And I said, I feel like it's hard to teach them about these different subjects when I can tell there's a really heavy burden that they're carrying. And so I said, I want to get my master's degree in marriage and family therapy. And it was around that time that God really captured my heart. He changed my life. It was really crazy how he just flipped my life upside right. And I, at that time, was engaged to be married at Penn State, but that guy broke up with me on Valentine's Day, and it was just this crazy experience. But I know God just used it all for the good, and it allowed me to go to get my master's at Fuller Seminary in Pasadena, California, which honestly I wasn't familiar with the area at all, but all the doors were open to do that. And so that's why I came to LA to get the master's in marriage and family therapy, and always really wanted to, I was doing youth ministry, and always wanted to be able to encourage and help people, whoever they were, whether kids or whoever, to have healthy relationships and have a better view of relationships based on their past, to heal from the past and really have so much hope for the future. And so
that's incredible. And I feel so much of what you're saying, it's you identified that in kids, and then it's so cool that God walked you through that in your own life of healing and walking through heartbreak and then having to heal from that. And now I feel when we go through those really hard times, it empowers you to actually help other people. And so I love seeing that you're doing that. Stefanie and her husband have the most amazing online courses to empower, especially I feel a lot of what I've seen recently is single women, and just how to walk through seasons of disappointment and heartbreak and really show people what a healthy relationship is. And then you guys are living that out in your marriage. And it's as I'm single, it's really inspiring to see a healthy, amazing marriage and see you guys just walking out in your purpose. So I actually would love, because I know you have an incredible love story with Caleb, but I also know you had to wait a while for that, and you also had to walk through a lot of seasons of heartbreak, and you kind of referred to that. So if you're willing to share, I would love if you could just talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thank you, Kirsten. Thanks for the encouragement about our marriage and our, we have such a passion, like you said, because we both been there. We both have faced different heartbreak and different things, and we both kind of came into our relationship with different trauma from the past. And so we really resonate with others that have gone through things, and definitely our mission is to help. So I'd love to share part of my story of just the pain that I had to walk through. I think I have this quote. I say, the more you heal from the past, the less it can steal from your future.
Wow.
And I love saying that because I realized before I knew that, I was carrying around like those students that I would see with, it felt like a huge backpack of just boulders on their back. I was carrying the same thing even when I was seeing them,
wow.
not really knowing what I was carrying.
Wow.
And when I was engaged to the person that I said back at college, I was carrying these big emotional heavy baggage from my past, all these different wounds, and it was coming up in all my different relationships. And I wanted to, like, I didn't know how to take off that baggage, but I wanted to learn, you know, especially as that guy dumped me on Valentine's Day. And it was, you know, such a crazy experience because he was the head of this ministry, and all my friends at the time were a part of the ministry, and the other girls that were going to be in my wedding, and he was basically their boss. And so they kind of had to choose between me and him, which I don't know why. I think it was kind of events were at his house, and like it was too hard for him for me to be there. So at that point, I feel like I really didn't have anyone in my life, but it was a time where God really allowed me to know my foundation and my worth was in him. And so much before, because of pain from my past, I put my worth in so many different things. Like especially male attention. Like I was really obsessed with, does this guy like me? Does this person like me? And if he liked me, it was like this insatiable need. I needed more attention, and no attention was going to be enough attention because my worth was so much in like, oh, is he going to text me? Is he going to like me? Am I going to be good enough at grades? Like this constant trying to prove that I was good enough. And it was like a hamster wheel that it was never, ever, ever, ever enough because it was really a deeper thing about, I wasn't sure about my identity. I didn't know who I was. I changed who I was depending on who I was with in order to get them to like me more so that I could feel like I was worthy. And it wasn't until God really spoke about my identity to me and started just saying, you are enough. Like you are so loved. You are so valuable. There's nothing that can take my love away from you. And just who you are made. You don't have to be anyone else. And I remember cleaning out, I was supposed to clean up my closet to move into, after I got married, into this guy's, you know, place who's had a house in Penn State. And I remember, okay, I don't have to wait anymore because he broke up with me. So I took everything out of my closet and put it all in the middle of my room. And I felt like I was doing the same in my heart. And then saying like, God, what do you want me to put back in the drawers? And like, what do you want me to throw out? What things did I do to only people please and to do something to try to make other people happy and not be who actually you created me to be? And so it was like this really powerful moment of healing. And then also like what things based on my past did I believe about myself that aren't true, that are causing me continual pain? Like I said, if you don't heal from your past, it's going to steal from your future. And so God took me on this journey to get my master's degree in marriage and family therapy. But also in that process, it wasn't just learning to help other people. Like I went to counseling for like 6 years or something like that, getting my own personal therapy and then learning as much as I could and applying it because I had so much pain from different things, from abuse, like sexual abuse from someone in high school, and just like these things of, there was different things of sexual abuse in college and just different pains that really put on my identity. And then I dealt with emotional abuse. The guy I dated for a long time, one of the guys was really emotionally abusive too, which really messes with your identity. And it really messes with you not trusting any of your decisions or things like that. So I really had to relearn all of that. And so it's amazing how God was able to heal that. And I think for me, the biggest thing I say to people that are single is, to take the time to heal from your past, because it's going to steal from your future relationships. It's not like it's a perfect journey. I'm still healing from the past, but the more we get to do that, the less it can steal from your current relationships. And so when I met Caleb, I was such a more healed person, and I wasn't willing to sacrifice who I actually was for anyone else. Like who my true identity to change, to have someone like me. So me and Caleb, and he was in the same sort of place. We both were able to be our most authentic versions of ourselves without putting on the mask. And which really allowed us to have, you know, start off the relationship, I think, on a good foundation.
That is so powerful. And like so much of what you said, I like want to talk about. But first of all, I love that picture of like putting all the clothes in the middle of the room. 'Cause it's like, even when I'm like cleaning out my closet, and like it hasn't been an experience like that, but it's like things have to get messy before they get cleaned up. And so that visual of just like putting everything out on the floor and then really taking stock of like, these are all the things that I've carried around my whole life that I just accepted as truth because it was part of what I walked through. But I actually don't have to let this cling to me anymore. Because I think so many times our brokenness and our trauma is so under the surface. We're not even aware of the things that are controlling us, or like you said, if you don't heal it, then it will steal from you. But like in order to heal it, you need to know what it is. And so I love that something that initially looked like such a dim and heartbreaking thing of like getting broken up by your fiance on Valentine's Day actually was so necessary to start this journey of healing. And at the same time, which I think is so cool, was like that Caleb was going on a similar journey, and that like it took that time and that heartbreak in order for you guys to be set up to have this healthy relationship where you guys can be authentically yourselves. And I think what you said too about like healing so that, and being empowered, then you have these boundaries. Like, I know who I am, so I'm not going to sacrifice this. And I think as women, a lot of times we want to people please. So like, I so relate with what you're saying of like, I know exactly how to be in every relationship, whether it's friendships or relationships, of like changing my identity so people will like me. But then I think the best antidote for that is to heal and to know your identity, because then without even realizing it, you do have those boundaries that you automatically put up when people aren't really like respecting your value. So I am encouraged. And also like your story with Caleb of like how literally, can you share the tooth thing? Because I think that's like a really cute and like quirky example of what I'm about to say. But then like the more deep version of that is like the person that you're meant to be with is so like, I feel like designed for you, that even their experiences that they're walking through, like it might be something similar that you'll both have to heal. So then you'll both be able to be authentic when you're together. But I want you to share the tooth thing.
Okay. I think one of the insecurities that I had all growing up were my teeth, and I got made fun of them sometimes, and I was missing a tooth. I can show you in a second, but it was over right here on the side of my mouth. It was actually this tooth, but then they pushed my teeth together. So I always was really insecure about that. And I always use different imperfections. And it, again, a lot of this was subconscious, but I used imperfections to disqualify me from good things in my life. So I would say, because this of my teeth, or because of this, I deserve this, like I deserve to be treated. If someone's treating me in a way that is not loving or kind, I deserve it, because look, I'm not good enough in this way, in this way, in this way. Wow. That wasn't coming from like the healed place, instead of being like, I am who I am, and the right person will adore me for my imperfections. That's why I'm like, I love the name of your podcast.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was so cute. I can show the.
Yeah.
So I have retainers in, but I don't have a tooth right here. Wow. And I'm going to get a tooth put in. Yeah. But it was so cute because I'm able to show that on camera without, and I've showed it on Instagram. I was really scared to show it the first time on Instagram, but I feel so confident because I no longer think that disqualifies me from good things in my life. And I want to speak that to other women. And I've showed that on Instagram, because I got a million DMs because there's so many women that struggle with something with their teeth or other imperfections that they say disqualified them. But I say, so I was telling Caleb's mom about it, and she's like, are you serious? She's like, Caleb had an extra tooth in that same exact spot. And she showed me a picture. So we did an Instagram reel of he had that same spot that I was missing a tooth. Wow. Had an extra tooth. He's like, he had your missing tooth. And so it's just so cute that, and I'm sure it was like this tooth that was coming out right there. That was probably an insecurity for him. Yeah. So the things we would have thought before of like, I need to hide this. Like no one can know. And that for me, I always smiled like that. You know, I don't want to show my teeth because I'm going to hide my imperfections because that's going to disqualify me and it turns out that he had an extra tooth and that didn't disqualify me. He loves me no matter what. And so I can walk confidently with whatever imperfection, knowing that I'm so loved by my Creator, by my husband. And even before my husband, I was able to walk in that identity, knowing that my Creator made me and he loves me, and that, that your whatever that imperfection you're trying to hide, it could be actually a reason why someone falls more in love with you, because and even part of your story, the pain you've walked through can make someone realize like, wow, look how strong you are, look how brave you are. And it's not something that you have to hide or be in shame. Like I had so much shame in my life, but to walk in freedom and knowing that there's so much joy when we can just like give God, Jesus takes my shame and he sets me free.
That's amazing. And now like how many people you're inspiring through that and through your willingness to be vulnerable. So I love that. And I think you're incredible, and you and Caleb are the best. So I know that you were talking about part of like your trauma was emotional abuse. And I feel like that's something, I actually got a question about this recently based on another episode I posted, but someone asked like, well, do you have any advice about someone that's in an emotionally abusive relationship? And I personally have not really walked through that. So I'm like not an expert in that, but I have a lot of friends that have. And I know with emotional abuse, it's tricky because it can be so subtle and manipulative that you might not even be aware of the emotional abuse. So I would love if you could just speak to that and offer any advice you might have.
Yeah, definitely. And you're right. It's so elusive. It's really hard to understand like what is actually going on, because it's not something physical, which can actually make it more difficult to understand. And actually, like I had mentioned before, it really undermines your person, because a lot of what they do can be really subtle, but it would be some things to look out for is like, how do they make you feel when you're around other people? I always ask my clients that question. Do they use a lot of sarcasm? Do they make fun of you? And when you tell them it hurts you, do they then say, oh, you're so sensitive? And they they devalue your feelings. They, if you make a decision, do they try to make you feel stupid for making a decision? If there's something that they hurt you, then do they turn around and put the blame back on you? So kind of asking yourself those questions if you're in a relationship that you're feeling undermined and you're feeling not good about who you are and your being and who you're created to be, I think are some of the things. Or having a lot of control over your life, trying to micromanage, control like every single aspect of your life. So those are some just like signs of emotional abuse. And I think I was really unaware of some of those things before until I knew. And I think it definitely, once you recognize and they're able to put the right boundaries in place in order to protect yourself from it. Another thing about emotional abuse, if you try to leave the relationship, they'll do a lot to try to make you feel really stupid. Like, again, it's undermining your decisions. So if you're saying like, I want to walk out of this relationship, they'll probably say something like, you just are anxious about this and you don't care about this, you know, like trying to make you feel stupid and then continually undermine your decisions. So to really have the confidence of knowing if it's not healthy for you, to be able to get help and like see a therapist or get into something that like my course or something that could be around people that can really speak life into you and to really have people that aren't going to undermine your decisions and to you to really have more confidence, because it might take a while for you to not second guess yourself, or to be able to make a decision without flip-flopping a million times because you're feeling anxious. But there is so much hope for healing, especially if it's recognized and recognized every time that little voice. I know I've talked to women that they say like they can sometimes even hear that person's voice, or just like a voice that they've kind of put in their head in the background of like, they do something. They're like, oh no, you're not smart enough to do that. You're not, you know, oh, look, you look overweight in that, or you look, you know, just these little nagging comments that can really tear apart a person's identity that they can still hear even after that relationship is over. That then I always talk to my students and talk to them about putting in the truth about their identity, even in that. It's like, no, that's actually not true. And the truth is, I'm beautifully and wonderfully made, and I am made for a purpose. And yes, I can make mistakes, but I am not a mistake. And so I can move forward in freedom.
That's such an important distinction of like separating the mistakes you make from your identity. And that's like, anyone that like regularly listens to my podcast, I probably mention Brene Brown every single episode because I love her, but she's a shame researcher, and she talks about shame is your identity of like, I am bad, whereas like guilt is I did something bad. And I think like whether we're talking about shame or talking about these emotionally abusive relationships and like having that voice in your head, being able to separate actions from your identity. Like your identity does not change regardless of what you do or what you don't do. And so I love that. That's just such a good practical tool of like recognizing the voice in your head and then acknowledging it's there. Because I think the more we try to push it down, the more that it can fester. So I think acknowledging it's there is so key, and then saying no to it, or just like adding truth to it. And I know that after you had gotten out of the emotional abuse, you walked through a season of singleness. And I mean, I'm personally in a season of singleness where like you can get really impatient and being like, I know my identity. Even when you get to that point of like forming your identity, it can be hard not to settle or to like start to doubt like God's timing. So how did you stay patient during that time?
Oh, that's a good question. I have this free ebook that's like what to do while waiting for the one. And I want to do a whole book because I've been compiling other things of like, what did I do while waiting? And then what things did I wish I do better that I wish I could, you know, if I could talk to my younger self of like, you know, once you're in that amazing relationship and you're married, if you could talk to yourself and what things would you tell them? So that's kind of what the book I'm trying to finish, but
I'll be the first to buy it.
So that's such a good question. And Caleb always is thinking the same thing and talking to men about it. But I think for one, knowing that it's not wasted time, any desert season in our life or feeling that, okay, the thing that we're looking for, we don't have it yet, I think is such a good time for preparation, and such a good time that I am so grateful that I spent time going to a therapist. That I wish, you know, what I tell my clients is, you know, they're with my course that I do, I'm like, man, I want people to do that because it really helps them get healing from anything in their past that they don't then have to bring into their future relationship. So it doesn't mean that me and Caleb then didn't bring anything in, because we still do. And there's different triggers that will come up that we have had to work through, because it's not like we just got into the marriage and it was perfect and everything was great. It's like, it takes a lot of work, and it's a lot of hard work. But I think the more you're willing to not have that pain be subconscious, but kind of understand it, and then as you're walking and healing from it, and as you're walking into your identity, continually speaking that truth over yourself. I really, another thing I tell my clients is like having like a really big purposeful why of why they're sticking to the boundaries that they've set for themselves. Deciding what will help them be set free in a lot of different ways. And then, really getting to walk that out with the different relationships in their life. So I think I always say like, learn how to be a really good friend, learn how to communicate well with your friendships. That's going to help your marriage, and it's also going to help your friendships. So it's not wasted time in knowing that I always say, I'm not willing to settle for less than God's best. And I ask other people, like, do you want less than God's best? And I think like I could have got married to the guy that actually proposed and broke up with me. He actually had asked me back out, and it was like a chance. Like, and, you know, he basically was like, I still want to marry you. This was like 6 months after. I never told that part of the story.
Yeah, I never heard that part. I'm like, when was this? I need the details.
I have to tell you all the details sometime. But it was really clear to me that that was not God's best. Wow. And I always say, like, anyone could be married. You just, you know, but are you willing to have, like, I would rather wait longer for God's best. And then there's preparation a lot of times for something that's better than to just rush into something that's not going to be the best, you know, for you.
Absolutely.
And so I don't know. I think just like very specific action steps is like, okay, what things am I seeing that could be triggers? Or if, you know, for women, looking at men, is there pain in the past for men? Because if you have pain from men, if you enter into a relationship with a man, it's gonna come out as you're interacting with that man. So as much as you can heal, and then same vice versa for a man, is there pain from past women in your life or past things in your life that you really need to heal in order to be the kindest, most authentic version of yourself, to love that person?
Right. And I think this is just a question that just came up for me. It's like, I think there can be, you know, taking that intentional time to heal so that you're ready, but then like not jumping into it too soon, right? Like jumping into another relationship too soon, but then also like not holding back just because you're afraid of like that. Cause I feel like it's such a fine line of like you said, there are some things that are inevitably going to come up, right? Yeah. So and I know the situation's probably different for everyone, but like, how did you know basically when you were ready to date again or to put yourself out there again?
That's a good question. I know even on our first date, I told Caleb, I'm still going to be dating other people. I'm not, you know, going to be exclusive with anyone right now. I'm just dating to get to know people. But it was interesting because as I got to know him, it was really, really clear that it was just, I never had felt that way in my whole life. Like I just never felt like I could be more myself and just adored for who I was, not who for what someone thought I could be. And so I never went on another date after that first date, even though I said, I'll be going on another date. And I did face fear at different points and that voice of second guessing myself. But I think you have to trust that best version of yourself, you know, when you're feeling peace, when you can ask yourself those questions, how do I feel around this person? How do they make me feel even when they're around other people? How do they treat the people in their lives? How do they treat like the waiter or their mom? Their mom is a big one. Like when I saw him around his mom and how sweet and kind he was to her. And I think again, I will keep going back to my clients, but I always have conversations with them. You know, so many women that I know, like they have the biggest hearts. Like you have the biggest heart. I always wanted to, like, I had so much to give, so much love to give, but making sure that that's going to the right people. Yeah. And so I talk about, is that okay to talk about privilege buckets? Okay.
I love privilege buckets.
Okay. I love it too. It's so good to think about. It's kind of goes along with boundaries, but I have this free PDF that people can download. If I can like give it to you for people to download.
I can link it in the bio here.
Okay. But basically thinking of, we only have only a certain amount of time, energy, you know, resources available to us. So who we give that to determines a lot about our lives. And so I think of the privilege buckets of, we have so much love to give, and are we giving that love? Like, who do we want to give that love to? And for me, in the tears, like I really wanted to give that love to God. And then even when I wasn't married, walking as a wife, like even before I was a wife, like knowing that I have the character of, you know, being this woman who is going to honor her husband, even when I didn't even know Caleb.
Yeah.
And how that I had certain things, both physical, emotional, spiritual, relational, that I really wanted to be special between me and my husband. Cause I wasn't just thinking what feels good right now, what's going to feel really good 10 years from now to be having something special to give to the really special people in my life. And so for me, there was like physical boundaries that came with that, but that also came with like amount of time. How much time am I going to think about a person? How much time am I going to spend even praying for that person, for someone that hasn't earned that place necessarily, especially like someone of the opposite sex that I'm interested in. And so then the privilege buckets go down from there. Like I have a lot of clients that have had a lot of friendships that they're giving privileges, like boyfriend privileges to, that then they're getting really anxious. They're feeling really anxious all the time. They're not having peace in their heart. They're feeling like this discrepancy. And so it's stealing from them as they're giving.
Wow.
And the guy's like, oh, I have all the boyfriend privileges. Why do I need to put a title on it?
Yeah, exactly.
And they're feeling stolen from. And so I'm saying, okay, what is the way you would want to have, like, what privileges do you want a boyfriend to get? And each person, you get to decide. Like, I'm not going to say that someone has, like, but whatever is going to give you peace in your heart and you not to have that anxiety at the end of the day of like, oh, I did this and this, and now I'm feeling anxious because I didn't get the text back, or I didn't get the affirmation back, because the right people will give you back and fill up your bucket as well, the people that deserve to be in it. So like every time once Caleb was my husband and I was giving so much love and so much care, he was giving that back to me and like filling me up and giving, you know, because it was this mutual relationship. And I mean, there's times depending on how people, you know, sickness and different things that some people could give more or less, but our hearts were both completely committed and there wasn't any doubt of that. And we both were willing to do that. So I love helping other people think through. And I think that, the PDF that I can give you kind of allows you to think through, how much time am I thinking about this person that's like a friend? And is that the right amount of time? Like, how do I even know, like, wow, I've just been like daydreaming about this person for 2 hours and he hasn't sent me a text back. Like, and I'm just worried and anxious. So what do I need to, like, how do I train my mind to be like, you know what, I want to put a boundary on that. And I'm going to say, you know what, I'm going to leave my headspace for the people that are going to be more committed to me or going to show that I'm also important to them. So you're not giving all your resources, time, energy, money, love, physical affection, whatever it is, to someone that then doesn't reciprocate in the way that makes you feel peace. And I think it's a way to guard your heart so you can walk forward in the right relationship. Because as Caleb was my friend, he didn't have my phone number as friends. Didn't allow for me, again, everyone's different. There's no judgment at all from my end. It's just, this is what worked for me. I didn't allow any guys of the opposite sex, or any guys of the opposite sex. They weren't allowed in my apartment. There was a physical boundary for me that I put, like, that also, you know, I told you there was pain from the past there. So it really was with what gave me peace, what didn't give me anxiety. And I had to learn that. And then also it made me really confident when Caleb and I went on that first date. I let him know, hey, we're not exclusive right now. Like I told him I might date someone else because I had to learn to trust him. Like there was a level of trust and commitment, and he continually followed through. He always texted me back. It was so clear that I was so important to him. And I loved being around him so much. And it was so clear he loved to be around me so much that then I could give, the trust was built over time, but I didn't just give him all my heart and all my energy. And I was able to say to him, hey, I'm saving sex for my husband. And I wasn't scared of that. If someone's going to walk away from me from that, they're not for me. Whatever boundary or privilege you set up for that person, if they're not willing to respect you on that, to me, it's a really big tell of those things of emotional abuse and physical abuse, because people that are emotionally and physically abusive hate boundaries. They hate, like, when you set regulations. So it's going to really weed those people out. So you're not going to just give your heart away to someone, hopefully, as you learn to walk this out, to the wrong people. And I think it's a really good way to then when the people are meeting all those things and you're like head over heels for them and they built that trust, then you can be excited to be like, they get to have Caleb gets to have my phone number. Now Caleb is allowed in my apartment.
Right.
Now he's allowed to have these privileges because he's earned them and he's given something back. And so I'm not giving my heart too soon. And that's really kind of how we had our relationship, even having we got a phone plan together once we got engaged, and then we moved in together after we got married. We never stayed overnight together until after we got married, because that to us, that felt safe to me. And then once we got married, we got to enter into all those things that are amazing, and you get all those amazing gifts and those amazing things, but without the anxiety or without wondering are they going to leave me, or are they going to text another girl, or are they seeing it's there was no fear of that, because we both built that trust and that love, and we both committed to each other.
That's so incredible.
It's so much freedom.
That's what I was going to say. I think sometimes when we're talking about boundaries, the word boundary sounds constricting, right? Whether you're talking about with kids or whatever, anytime you hear you can't do this, it sounds like there's a lack of freedom there. But what the amazing thing about boundaries is it gives you the structure to then be free within those boundaries without any kind of anxiety. And I think so many times people talk about boundaries, but there's a murkiness around that. I'm like, oh yeah, I do need to set boundaries around my time, whatever. But then I haven't had a clear definition of what that actually looks like. And so what I love about the privilege bucket thing is that it actually gives you tangible things to learn how to set those boundaries in a very applicable way. Because I think sometimes the opposite of that is that I've been okay, I need to set boundaries. So what I end up doing is I close people out, which is also not healthy.
Right.
Because there's a way to guard your heart without closing people out. And so it's a nuanced thing. It's really tough. And I honestly struggle with that. And so I think having that framework and laying it out so you know exactly what is true for you, and then you don't have to worry about it. It's we set up structures in our lives so that you can have freedom to just exist in that space.
I love that. Yeah. And a good example of that, one of my clients, she moves to different cities a lot. And so one of the guys she dated from a new city, she started dating him. She didn't have any friends in that friend group, and she just invested all of her time, energy, effort, emotion into this person, no one else. He broke up with her. She's now my client, and she was so scared to be she was moving to a new city. What if that happens again? So we did the privilege bucket thing. She actually did a contract with herself as well of this is the different things that people get. And until he's my husband, even then, I want to have friendships. I'm going to make sure that I see him, we're just friends this many days a week. And I'm going to make sure to go to my Bible study, to go to my workout classes, to, see my friends this many days. She was able to say, okay, he doesn't get all of my time. He doesn't get all my money. He doesn't get all my resources. He's not my husband. And he left me, and now I'm left with nothing. But now I need these other things in my life to be the fullest, most vibrant version of myself. And then as the person gains privileges, or you can see, okay, this person deserves it. Hey, I have a lot of love to give. I love giving. If you're someone that loves to give gifts, it's you get to give those gifts, but make sure it goes to the right person at the right time. Maybe you have a fund, if you're a gift giver and you want to just give a guy that's a friend, a lot of gifts, but then it makes you feel anxious. Maybe it's okay, I'm going to save up money and I'm going to get my husband a really good gift. So it's not, it's still you're putting away for someone and you're still going to get to give love. And then as they earn it and as your heart's ready and feels peace, you can give that. And if you gave a privilege you didn't feel comfortable with, you can kind of pull back and be okay, why didn't I feel peace? What do I need to put in place to make sure? And then it can feel so freeing to just give that, whatever it is, what you're saying, how I was then able to not have fear, to love Caleb as he built that trust over time. And so that you're willing to open up your heart to the people that then earn that trust and that you're having
absolutely
freedom for.
Yeah. And I love what you said about that example with the client of when she set these boundaries, she then was able to become the most vibrant version of herself, which actually in the long term will help the person that you're in a relationship with. So I think a lot of times you think of boundaries as like a selfish thing, but it's actually one of the most selfless things you can do, because you can't fully be there for other people and show up as the best version of yourself if you're not setting up those boundaries. And again, getting back to Brene Brown, she talks about how we can't be compassionate without boundaries. It's true. Because if you don't set boundaries, then you start to get bitter and resentful because you feel like someone's taking from you, and you can't have compassion for someone that you feel like is taking from you. So I think it's a counterintuitive thing to think about, that by setting boundaries, you A, have more freedom, B, you have more compassion, and C, you can like actually help people more. It's true. But it genuinely, it's just, I've seen it true in my life, and also just hearing you talk about it. And I know that you also have the analogy of the concert. Is that pretty similar, or like what's...
Yeah, it's just another way to think, like how ever someone understands it more, but if someone goes into a concert, they have to have a ticket to get into the concert, and then at the concert, sometimes you get a front row spot, or sometimes you get a backstage pass, or sometimes you get VIP access. And sometimes again, working with women, they've given VIP access to basically strangers in their life. They meet someone and they're like, have VIP access to my life. And then their heart's broken, they're shattered. They have so much love to give, and they're just like, here you go. And it's such a beautiful thing. But then it takes away from the people that actually deserve that VIP access. So to understand, it's very similar to the privilege bucket. It's just a kind of a different way to understand it. What access do they deserve? Like, did they earn that VIP? Is it safe for them to have that backstage pass, to be able to like get to know my heart in this like vulnerable thing? Is it safe for me to share this vulnerable thing with this person? Is my heart ready to share that? Is it going to make me anxious? Did they deserve that? Did they earn that space in my life? And kind of getting to ask yourself, like, what access have you given to people? Both of your heart and just emotions and physical boundaries that then leave them feeling like icky about who they are, when really, like you said, boundaries, it allows the good to be in and the bad to be out. And so that they will be, another thing is like thinking about exes. Like for me, I put a lot of boundaries of like, I'm going to like, again, no judgment, but if I had my ex's number and I was going to pick up his calls and I was going to look at his Facebook, that was stealing my emotional, mental energy. So I had boundaries for me on that, which allowed me to heal and not continually have this emotional connection.
Because like when reminder.
So if I'm continually calling someone, it's like sparking some old flame or whatever. I'm not going to be as emotionally available for if my husband walks into my life. So for me, I'm like, before, like 15 years ago, before I did this work, I would just kind of allow whoever was in, I would pick up whoever phone call, anyone could have the access to my life. Like I would talk to them. And then when I learned this, I'm like, people that have emotionally abused me do no longer get to have this access, because if I get to and they hurt me physically or emotionally, I can't show up for even my friends, my parents, my future husband. Like, I want to be more healed, and I can't let those continually wounds happen in my life, because that's actually hurting the other people in my, not only me, but the other people in my life. So they get those like, they don't even get a concert ticket anymore. Like once, and it might seem harsh, but they will have other people to love them. They will, I hope and pray good things for them. I have forgiveness again. Forgiveness plays, people get forgiveness. Like, I don't have to carry the burden of unforgiveness. I can like say, God bless them, but they don't need to like, I don't have to be their healer. I don't have to be their fixer. God can put someone else in their life and do the work with them, but that's no longer, that's not my job.
And I think sometimes it gets skewed because we hear all the time, like, yes, forgiveness will make you more free, right? And that's true. But I think it sometimes gets skewed where we think that forgiveness is synonymous with giving them access back into our life. And it's different. You can forgive someone from afar. Sometimes you don't even have to have a conversation of I forgive you. And I think in some situations, it's actually wise not to have that conversation, because if that person's not healed, then you give them even like the slightest opening, they'll take it and they'll try to manipulate you again. So
it's so good. I always say, forgiveness and reconciliation are two very different things. And also a lot of people, if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. And to know that, and to know that you can let go of that burden, you can say, I choose to forgive them. I put love in the place of hate because I get to work forward without that boulder on my back. A lot of those boulders on my back were unforgiveness for myself and for other people. And to drop that, to let it go into God's hands, it's free. I don't carry that anymore. I get healed from those things. And I can switch it to see, instead of me being a victim, me switching it around to be like, they no longer get dictation over my story. Like I'm no longer going to let their pain continually walk out my storyline, because we're, we're the authors of our life. We're the person, like we're the lead character. So we get to decide, like, will their storyline continually put me in a bad direction, or am I going to use it? We see stories all the time where something bad happens, but they've used it for good. So we get to reframe it in our mind. Okay, this thing, it really hurt me. It took me down. It was like, if you're climbing a mountain, maybe it was like you fell all the way down and you're at the bottom. But in your head, you can reframe it as like, now I can have an incline to take me up to the top of the mountain, and I no longer have to be pushed down, because look, I'm putting good people in my life. I'm allowing good things in my life, and I forgive them, and I can now be propelled forward. And anytime that voice has you say like holding on to bitterness or anger, I always try to say like, I let them go. Like I let that go, and I let that burden go. And I always say like, I love you. Please forgive me. I forgive you. You're forgiven, and walk forward without needing to have a phone call, needing to have any sort of thing, and just get to drop that burden, and just, you can go up a mountain way faster without those burdens on your back.
That's so powerful. And that's such like a helpful, practical tool. I think what you just said is really key, of like, when those thoughts come up again, saying, I forgive you, because I don't think forgiveness is necessarily a one-time thing. It's not like one and done. And then I think for me in my past, when I thought I've forgiven someone, and then those like resentful or bitter thoughts come up, I'm like, oh, I guess I haven't forgiven them. Maybe I should text them and say like, I hope you're well, or whatever, like whatever the thing is. And like, maybe sometimes forgiveness does look like a text, but I think that realizing that if you're feeling like you're not over some kind of hurt in the past, and you thought you've forgiven them, that's not a bad thing. That's actually probably the norm. And there's a way that, just like those thoughts of like having the emotionally abusive person in your head and letting go of those voices, you can talk to those voices. You can also talk to that like unforgiveness in your heart in a way that still creates a boundary with the person and not giving them access back into your life. Whether that's romantic or friendship. I think even with the all access thing, that's really relevant for friendships.
It's huge for friendships. It's huge for entering into a great relationship. If you have toxic friends in your life, it would be really hard to enter into a good relationship.
Because, and like, who are you taking advice from? Who are you allowing to speak into your life? Because again, like with the relationship, if they haven't earned a privilege bucket, if you haven't earned a place to speak into my life, then why am I listening? If I'm looking at the fruit of your life and there's none, then like, why am I letting, and there's no judgment there, right? But it's just like, because I think I'm very cognizant of like wanting advice from people, and like wanting to think through situations and hear differing opinions of my own, which is a good thing sometimes. But if you let too many voices in, then you can't really get to your own truth, because you're just hearing all these different voices. So I think having that core community around you, where the people that you're allowing to speak into your life actually have earned the place, their actions have proven that they actually have your well-being, your best well-being in mind. They're living in a way, in living their lives with consistent character, that, okay, I actually trust them to speak into my life now. And I think I'm a big fan of analogies and metaphors, and I think it really helps put some of these very like elusive things into practical terms. So I love that, and I will link the bucket analogy in the episode notes. Winding down here, one of my last questions. I know that you've talked about like an intentional thought life, and we've kind of talked about that of like with forgiveness and the emotional abuse and like speaking to those thoughts. But what does that really mean to you to have an intentional thought life, and how can it actually free us from those toxic behaviors and relationships and maybe patterns that we're making in our dating lives. Like I know you talk to a lot of single clients and maybe they're seeing patterns of toxic relationships. Like what is the link between identifying your intentional thought life and letting go of toxic habits?
Yeah, I love that question. That's a lot of the work that I do with my clients. Something that is really powerful, it's called the pain and peace cycle. And so I teach my clients and they really learn what their toxic cycle or their pain cycle is and what are their core lies about their identity. And it's a big thing in terms of how to enter into good relationships, having those, because even if you have a great relationship, a lot of people wonder like, oh man, this couple looked like they were so happy. And then all of a sudden they're in this horrible relationship. What happened? Everyone has a toxic cycle. Everyone has these core lies about their identity that then a core lie would be, I'm not good enough. So about who I am as a person. So if I believe that intense of a feeling, something has to happen. So a lot of times there's a lot of negative coping patterns based on these many times subconscious core lies about their identity that then creates this pattern. So if I play into that lie, I'm not good enough, and then I do actions based on that, whether that's overeating or undereating, or if that's like just whatever that, there's so many different coping mechanisms, which then makes me start to believe another lie. I'm unloved or I'm unworthy, which then it's a cycle that perpetuates itself. So I help my clients figure out what their cycle is and how to stop it. And it's really powerful to see like one of my clients who she didn't understand why she continually went back with this ex, and she was so frustrated with herself. And once we were able to work together, we realized that this ex, he was really abusive, used her for sex, used her for a lot of different things, mistreated her, and then would like cheat on her, but she kept going back to him. But she kept so whenever she would see him, she would lie to her family and friends about it. And so she put all this distance based on the lies between her and her family and her friends. And so this core lie of her identity is I'm alone. Like, no, I'm always going to end up alone. Like who I am is just like alone. Wow. That was really triggered, which when she believed that, it pushed her back to be with her ex. Wow. Even though he mistreated her. Yeah. And so once she was able to see this cycle and we were able to work together, it made a lot of sense to her. Like, okay, I'm not crazy. It makes a lot of sense why your coping mechanism is propelling you to stay in this really toxic relationship. So it was really cool getting to work with her. The cool part, obviously seeing her walk out the freedom cycle, which we helped her get to. And then she was able to meet and marry the love of her life. Wow. They got married in December. So
That's amazing.
I started working with her 2 years ago. Yeah. In their wedding with this great guy, which she felt so free to, like her family and friends love him. Yeah. It was so cool. I talked to her on the phone like last month, and she was just saying how it's just a totally different experience. She feels completely free to be herself, and doesn't have to hide things anymore. And it's like, oh man, this is what a great relationship feels like. And she's like, I'm so grateful that you taught me how to walk into this freedom. And so, and claiming the truth of her identity. And a lot of my clients that have been married, like from, after our time working together, it's really cool because it also helps their marriage, because they there's always going to be triggers in our life to believe those toxic thoughts about our identity, but to recognize that and then to be able to put in the truth and be able to not have that shame over those feelings, because even the feelings can bring up shame, but to keep claiming the truth about like, I'm not my mistakes. I am loved. Like I am cherished. I have a purpose for my future, and really getting to claim that it's the core of who we are, and then walking out a different reality, and then realizing having that breeds compassion for other people as we understand, for the right people in our lives, because the people that have earned that, to be able to have compassion and grace for them.
Wow. I love that story too of your client. Like I feel like the perfect like ending to that. Like now that she's married and like really getting to see the work that she's put in, like that must be so fulfilling. And I think, like identifying what those triggers are, and especially shame triggers, because shame like isolates us from people. So then it sends us down the spiral of like going back to those toxic things. So
exactly.
That's so powerful. Okay. So we've talked about a lot. If you could leave listeners with one thing, what would it be?
I just got this overwhelming joy thinking about my relationship with my husband, Caleb. And I just think about the women that might be watching this, or think about people. And if I could have talked to myself, like right after the breakup, I remember I had a lot of crossroads, and I remember all those crossroads. Like one was saying, just go back to your old way of life, just go and like give access to anyone, I didn't use those words, but just settle for less, just go and like cope with your pain and however you want. And then this other voice was saying like, use the time to heal yourself and to know. I kept thinking, I remember saying to myself, if it's only me and you, God, forever, but I get to be the truest, most, like you keep building me up to the best version of myself, that's going to be enough. And I learned to love myself. Like for the first time, I really hated myself for a long time. There's still some times that I struggle with it based on the trauma from the past, but he taught me how to enjoy time with myself and to know how, like, I just hope and pray that whoever's listening, like, gets to know, like, you're the most unique you there is. Like, you're the only you there is. You have such an amazing purpose for your life, and that just the vision of there's something so good for you. Like, believe that that whatever imperfection isn't not going to take away from your future. It actually can build to your future for something so good. And it's so worth it. Like, it is so worth the whatever it is, and you don't have to be alone in your pain. There's so many friends and so many people that want to come around you, like good people that can help you in this space. So
it's so incredible. Thank you for sharing that. And I do want to take this time to like honor you, because it's like I've heard your story. Like, I met you when you were married, but I heard your story, and I know it was a really long time of waiting and healing and believing for God's best. And you stayed patient in that. And now getting to see you like walk out that vision that you had, that you knew was there, and not settling for anything less, and seeing the fulfillment of that. And then also like our community of like all of our friends, like we all, like you said, like we're not alone in that. And like the more that we share these like insecurities and these vulnerabilities, the more that we can empower each other. So I love everything about that. And anyone listening, knowing that like sometimes, and I think I felt this way, where I feel like really alone sometimes, and like, oh, I'm the only one going through this. Why is no one reaching out to me? Sometimes, like, if I can just encourage anyone listening, if you're feeling that way, reach out to someone, because a lot of times everyone's kind of hiding in their loneliness and pain. And like sometimes there's so much power that can come from you extending a hand out, and also saying like, I actually need help. Because by being able to say I need help, you give the space for someone else to step in and connect with you, and both people are blessed by that. So
I love that. I say, like, be the friend that you wish others were to you. And like, if you're like dreaming of your perfect relationship and really thinking through, like, I want someone that treats me this way, and I want someone that's going to honor me in this way. Like, be a person that honors other people in the way that you want to be treated. Like, I think me doing that in my time of singleness, not that I always did that. Right. No, I didn't always walk out my singleness perfect at all. But knowing anytime I took a step back, like not holding that shame and keep walking forward and healing, and there's so much redemption. And
right. And what you said is like so key about like being the person that is worthy of dating the guy that you are dreaming of. And like, when I say that, I mean like you are already worthy as it is. But like, if you're saying, oh, I want someone that respects my time, are you respecting your time right now? Are you respecting others' time? I have a mentor that said she was really convicted in her singleness. She was like had this like long laundry list of all the things she wanted in a guy, but she actually wasn't really like living those things out. And she had this like moment of realizing and like imagining like God literally as a father, of like, his kids, like that son is like his kid too. And like to make sure that you're not going to hurt him. Right. And make sure that you're healed and whole. And so it's like, it's a two-way street. And so I think getting back to staying patient in your singleness, I know that's what like my singleness has been about, is like being the best version of myself that I can be for my future husband, and to also just like spill into my friendships now, you know, like that season's not lost.
And you're doing what I mean, walking in your purpose, like being like loving who you like, waking up. We always have to be with ourselves no matter what. And so loving the person you wake up always next to, which is with yourself, and walking into your purpose and walking and running after God, running after your purpose in what he's created you on earth for. And then it's like, your focus doesn't have to be like, I'm so anxious to get a husband. It's like, oh, I'm walking in my purpose. I love who I am. And like, I'm so excited for when that person gets to run next to me with that, but
it's not necessary.
I'm still, you know, a beautifully, wonderfully made human being, and enjoy the time that I get with myself and with God every day.
It's amazing. Okay,
you walked that out so good, Kirsten.
Oh, thank you. It means a lot. It's taken a while to get there, honestly, and like also kind of leading in my next question, and the reason why the name of this podcast is Imperfect is because I've been a perfectionist my whole life. It's something I've struggled with, and but I've learned the more that I like embrace my vulnerabilities and my imperfections and share that with the people around me, like the most strength that comes from that. Even like the story of your tooth is like a practical example of like, by you sharing that, like you've actually empowered and inspired so many people. So with that, what is the imperfection that you're most proud of?
That was one, I mean, obviously I already showed you guys my tooth.
You could use the tooth if you want, but if there's
I was going to use that, but I think something my whole life, I hated how sensitive I am. Like I can feel people's feelings a lot, and I hated that sometimes. But I think I'm really proud of that now because it gives me, it spurs me on to love other people. Just like even the past pain that I've gone through, I can feel what others might be going through. So it helps me put myself in their shoes always, so that I can hopefully love them where they're at and help them not have to stay in a painful place, and like love them in their pain, but love them hopefully also that they can grow out of that pain. So yes. Yeah,
that's incredible. I relate to that a lot too. There's a reason why I'm an actor, because I'm emotional. And it is like, sometimes you feel like crazy for it, or like, I wish I didn't get so upset with these things, but it actually is such a powerful thing when you learn how to embrace it and use it in a healthy way. So
and use it as a gift, and use it to, okay, how can I bless other people? How can I let other people feel known and loved and seen? And well, you're so amazing. I'm so grateful for you, just who you are in my life, but also you willing to come on here and share your story. And I know so many people are going to be blessed by the wisdom that you shared. And how can people connect with you that's listening? So my Instagram is Stefanie.Rouse, and Stefanie with an F, and then it's Rouse like house, but with an R. And so Stefanie.Rouse on Instagram, and then on my website, StefanieRouse.com. And I think you'll link.
I'll link all of this in the episode notes, and on the YouTube, we'll put all of the text on there. Yeah.
Wonderful. And then with our relationship course, that's also on our website. And we have, if people listening are married, we also have a married course coming out, and a marriage book coming out. So we're excited because we love relationships. Relationships relationships are what life is all about. And they, for us, me and Caleb, our biggest passion is having people, helping them have the most healthy relationship with themselves, others, and God. And so I would love to connect with anyone that feels like I want a fuller, richer relationship with myself, others, or God in my marriage and my singleness. So that's what I'm always learning about, always growing in, and love to help other people grow in it. Yeah, that's so incredible. I'm so excited for the book, and like all the content you guys have already posted, so amazing. And I know just going to continue to grow. So thank you again, Steph. Thanks, Kirsten.
Yeah, and thank you. And thank you everyone for listening. We will see you next week.